This is News Talk 980 CKNW.
Welcome back. We're just 1 week away for what promises to be a textbook historical moment. We're talking about when the British vote a week on Thursday on whether they're going to stay in the European Union. And the fallout is going to impact every financial market. You know this. In fact, as our business analyst, Michael Campbell, host of Canada's #1 rated financial show, Money Talks, says it's already moving currencies, stocks, the gold market, with the potential for a whole lot more to come. So let's bring in Mike to go further with this. Michael, I suspect that the vote in Britain, not a surprise to you because you've been talking for years that the EU, you say, will survive.
Yeah, I don't think the European Union is going to be with us in the same form coming up. I mean, Greece was the first sort of example of that when it really strained the relationships in there. I still think Greece should leave. But this is incredible that the UK is going to vote on this. The bookies say they're going to stay, but the polling says they're going to go at this point, although the bookies are getting a little less sure of this one. But I think it's this. It's just the latest manifestation of what's going on in the European Union. I mean, anti-EU parties are rising throughout Europe. And by the way, it is scaring the heck out of the EU political elites. I did a stat, by the way, on Money Talks a couple of weeks ago that showed there's 170,000 European Union bureaucrats, twice as many as the UK has in the armed forces.
That's crazy.
So that's how big it is when you look at that. But you look at other things here. This is part of a bigger trend. In North America, we focused on Donald Trump, and I think we've missed a real message there, or Bernie Sanders. In Italy, you've got the Five-Star Movement, which it looks like it's about to win in Rome. You've got anti-EU parties all throughout Europe gaining momentum. So, as I say, I see the Brexit vote just as part of that bigger trend.
Wow. Well, let's talk about the specific impact on Canada and even Vancouver in a minute. But first, what do you think the immediate impact is going to be everywhere?
Well, I think the thing we have to remind each other is that, clearly international events impact us here. I mean, our oil prices are not set domestically. We've got, when you look at interest rates, clearly that's not set within the country. We look at our own real estate market, so much talk about the influence of foreign buying there. So it's one of those events people say, what's it got to do with me? Well, we should just remember that all of this stuff seems to have a lot to do with us. But the big thing you just alluded to is we're already seeing money move to safety. One of the big things yesterday, for the first time in history, German 10-year government bonds actually went negative.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, and what that means is you got money in other places of Europe. You're moving it into the German bonds. Germany perceived to be by far the safest financially of all of the European countries. So that's why the money moved in there. But it's terrible for, savers and pensioners and stuff like that. Now, I think the other thing they're worried about is there's going to be so much uncertainty when, if this indeed goes through. And as I said, the bookies say no, the polls say yes. But if it went through, my goodness, we'd enter some real short-term panic and uncertainty. Central banks have already said that they're going to act to calm the markets. But I think the other thing here, Lynn, is, as I say, this is just one of the steps. It's not the end product here. I think if Britain votes to leave, what they're going to do is set a precedent for others. And now they have their own currency, so it's easier. But, I think Greece, as I alluded to earlier, just has to leave. It's a disaster. They've got to default on their debts, have their own currency, that kind of stuff. But Britain may provide the template for what a trading relationship would look like.
You know what? I don't know how you sleep at night. Ignorance is bliss sometimes. That's what I have to say. Let's talk about how this impacts Canada specifically.
Well, one of the things, for example, is a ton of companies from Canada who have offices in the UK or doing business in the UK, but because the UK had access to the EU. So I bet they're sweating right now. And as I said, this is the beginning of the process for the demise of the European welfare state. I think by now this should be obvious, but obviously it's not. One of the most disconcerting things I've seen in our political discussions is that we've learned nothing from what's gone on in Europe. We completely ignore Europe, and there's lots to learn about what not to do. They got flatlining growth for a good reason and predictable stuff. But I think you're looking at like the sovereign debt crisis there. They've got an entitlement crisis coming, the incredible incompetence with which they handled the refugees. I think they're all going to contribute to this disintegration of the EU. And Brexit's just the latest manifestation of that.
Good Lord. So where does it all end?
Let me add one more thing.
Okay.
Why I think this is important, I've been on this for a couple of years, is I think the next big move in the markets is going to be money scared to death in Europe moving into the U.S., pushing the U.S. dollar much higher. I think it's going to provide some of the fuel for a long-term bull market in U.S. stocks. Move into Canada after that. We won't be their first choice at all, but I think give it a year or two, like 2018, they're going to say, Canada's not so bad either, and certainly beats the uncertainty of Europe. So I think that's how it all sort of comes together.
So is that going to fuel housing prices even higher here?
Well, certainly we're going to be in demand. It will certainly, after an initial move into the U.S., it'll sort of hurt the loonie there, but I think then the loonie recovers, then our stocks become very attractive and other property. And, yeah, I think that it will be attractive, as we are right now, though, for investment into Canada.
Wow.
U.S. still first choice, but I think we're not going to be that far behind because we don't have that level of uncertainty.
Wow. So where does it all end, Michael?
Well, for me, it's the demise of the welfare state model. I think, again, it's going to be propelled by the entitlement crisis. The U.S. is not going to be paying its Social Security. There's got to be big changes there. I keep talking about pension problems, and it seems like every week we get yet one more example of that. I think that hurts. But look at how tough it is to change things. Right now, today in France, there's incredibly violent labor reform, labor protests going on over what I think in Canada we'd certainly say are very mild reforms to try and get the economy going. But we're not just talking protests; we're talking violence there. That's what scares me, Linda. That an increase of social violence. We started to talk about that on Money Talks about 3 years ago. I think we've absolutely seen that in spades, but I don't think it's we ain't seen nothing yet. And one of the things I'm scaring people with, and I'm absolutely convinced, Donald Trump is not the end of some process. He's the beginning of one. The Five-Star Movement, Podemos in Spain, National Front in France, and the UK party that wants to leave the European Union. All of that is the beginning, and I'm worried where that ends.
The world is going crazy.
It is, by the way, just very quickly. This is historical change. I can't impress upon people enough. This isn't some mild one-off stuff. This is a major trend, and it's going to impact all of us financially.
All right. Well, we'll watch it unfold.
And I'm happy to be in Canada.
Yeah,
thanks, Linda.
Me too. Thanks, Michael Campbell.
Vancouver's News, Vancouver's Talk. This is News Talk 980, CKNW.